Calling any event the most watched in history is dangerous. It sounds powerful. It sounds like the kind of phrase that belongs in a trailer, on a thumbnail, or across the front page of a sports website. But if you say it too confidently before the event has even happened, it turns into hype. And hype is cheap. So let's say this carefully. The 2026 World Cup could become one of the biggest viewing events the sport has ever seen. It could become one of the most watched, most talked about, and most shared tournaments in football history. It has the ingredients: 48 teams, 104 matches, 3 host countries, 16 host cities, enormous stadiums, North American media power, global football obsession, and a tournament window running from June 11 to July 19. But could is the key word. Because the world in 2026 is not the world of the old World Cups. Attention is bigger than ever, but it is also more fragmented than ever. People do not all gather around one television at the same time anymore. Some watch live, some watch highlights, some only see goals on their phone, some follow through podcasts, short clips, watch parties, reaction streams, memes, and tactical breakdowns after the match. That tension is the story. World Cup 2026 might be huge because football has never had more ways to reach people. But it might be harder to measure than any World Cup before it, because watching no longer means one simple thing. So this is not a guaranteed record story. It is not a victory lap before the first ball is kicked. It is a question. Why could the 2026 World Cup become one of the biggest events in history, and what could stop it? To understand that, start with the most obvious change: scale. The 2026 World Cup is expanding from 32 teams to 48 teams. That one decision changes the shape of the whole tournament. More countries qualify, more squads arrive, more national anthems play, more fan bases wake up on match day believing, even if only for 90 minutes, that something impossible might happen. And because of that expansion, the tournament grows to 104 matches. That is not a small adjustment. That is a different kind of event. It means more days with football, more group stage drama, more knockout games, and more opportunities for one goal, one save, one red card, or one upset to travel around the world. For traditional fans, expansion is complicated. Some people worry that 48 teams is too many. They worry the early games could become uneven. They worry the quality could be diluted, or that the group stage might feel less elite than the World Cups they grew up with. Those concerns are not imaginary. When a tournament gets bigger, it does not automatically get better. But from an attention point of view, expansion does something very powerful. It creates more emotional entry points. That is the part people sometimes miss. A casual viewer does not always start with tactics. They do not always start with formations, pressing triggers, or expected goals. Often, they start with identity. They start because their country is playing, or their parents' country, or the country their grandparents left, or the country where they studied, worked, or fell in love with the game. The World Cup is not just a football competition. It is one of the rare moments when sport turns into a global roll call. When a nation qualifies, the tournament enters kitchens, schools, offices, barbershops, family group chats, local clubs, and neighborhood watch parties. People who do not watch club football every weekend suddenly know the kickoff time. They ask who is starting. They learn the goalkeeper's name. They wear the shirt. They care. That is why more teams matters. It does not simply mean more matches on a schedule. It means more communities with a reason to pay attention. And in 2026, those communities will not only be inside the countries that qualify, they will be everywhere. Diaspora communities can turn a group stage game into a local festival thousands of miles away from the host city. A match involving an African team can fill cafes in Europe. A match involving a South American team can take over neighborhoods in the United States. A match involving an Asian team can dominate screens across time zones, even if the kickoff time is awkward. That is the World Cup's secret weapon. It sells belonging. The second reason 2026 could become enormous is geography. For the first time, the Men's World Cup will be hosted across the United States, Mexico, and Canada. That matters because this is not just one host nation opening its doors. It is a continental stage across North America. There will be 16 host cities. There will be games across huge distances. There will be established football culture in Mexico, massive sports infrastructure in the United States, and a growing football identity in Canada. Each host brings something different. Mexico brings history. Its relationship with the World Cup is deep, and football there does not need an explanation. The United States brings scale, giant stadiums, major media markets, sponsors, broadcast muscle, and a sports industry that knows how to turn a game into a week-long conversation. Canada brings a growing football identity and a chance to make that growth feel more permanent. Together, the three hosts create a tournament that feels local to a huge section of the Americas while still being global in audience. Of course, geography also creates problems. North America is enormous. Travel can be demanding. Distances between host cities can be vast. Time zones can help some viewers and hurt others. There is no perfect schedule for everyone. The World Cup belongs to the world, but it has to happen somewhere. Still, the location creates a particular opportunity. For viewers across the Americas, 2026 will feel closer than many recent tournaments. And if the tournament catches fire in the United States, the effect could be massive, because the American media system is extremely loud. That does not guarantee deeper football culture. A month of excitement does not automatically create a lifelong fan, but it can create entry points. It can make a kid ask for a ball. It can make a family choose a national team. It can make football feel less foreign to people who have always treated it as background noise. The third reason is the match count. 104 matches means the tournament will have more chances to produce moments. And moments are the currency of the World Cup. Most people do not remember every match from a tournament. They remember flashes, a last-minute winner, a penalty shootout, a goalkeeper standing on his head, a young player announcing himself, a favorite collapsing, an underdog refusing to go away, a stadium shaking after a goal that nobody expected. The more matches you play, the more chances you have for those flashes. But there is a trade-off. More football can create more drama, but it can also create fatigue. Viewers have limits. Even passionate fans cannot watch everything. Casual fans definitely cannot watch everything. When there are too many matches, some games become background noise. People pick and choose. They follow their country, the biggest teams, and whatever match social media tells them is suddenly important. That is where 2026 becomes interesting. It might not be watched in the old way, where the same people sit through every match from start to finish. Instead, it may be consumed in layers, full live matches, highlight packages, social clips, reaction streams, and explainers after the fact. That is modern attention. It is not clean, but it is huge. A goal in 2026 might be seen live by millions, then replayed by millions more, clipped into short videos, debated by analysts, and turned into memes. One moment can have multiple lives. That is why the phrase "most watched" is tricky. Are we talking about live television viewers, streaming viewers, total tournament reach, clips, social impressions, unique viewers, average audience, global cumulative audience? Different measurements can tell different stories. So the careful claim is this: World Cup 2026 has the potential to be one of the biggest attention events in sports history, even if the exact measurement depends on how viewing is defined. And the reason is simple. Football now lives everywhere at once. Older World Cups became famous through live broadcasts, newspapers, radio, highlight shows, and word of mouth. Those things still matter, but now they are only part of the machine. In 2026, a match can become a global story before the players have even left the pitch. A controversial referee decision can be slowed down, zoomed in, translated, argued over, and posted across platforms in minutes. A celebration can become a trend before the final whistle. A player's emotional interview can travel farther than the match itself. A fan reaction in the stands can become a symbol of the whole tournament. That is the clip economy. It does not always reward depth. Sometimes it rewards outrage. Sometimes it rewards confusion. Sometimes it rewards the loudest opinion instead of the most accurate one, but it is incredibly effective at spreading attention. For a tournament like the World Cup, that can be rocket fuel. The fourth reason 2026 could be massive is story density. Every World Cup arrives with stories, but this one has an unusually crowded board. There are the defending champions, Argentina, carrying the weight that always comes after winning the biggest prize. There are traditional powers like Brazil, France, Germany, Spain, England, and others, each arriving with pressure and expectation. There are host nations with different emotional stakes. The United States, trying to prove it belongs on a bigger football stage, Mexico carrying decades of passion, and Canada, trying to show that its rise can become something more permanent. There will be underdogs. There will be teams that qualify after years of heartbreak. There will be players who see this as their last chance, and younger players who see it as their first great stage. That generational overlap is one of the most powerful things about the World Cup. Every tournament feels like a handoff between eras. Some players arrive trying to protect a legacy. Others arrive trying to build one. That is why it would be a mistake to build the entire story of 2026 around one celebrity player. Famous names drive clicks, but squads can change. Injuries happen. Form rises and falls. Selection decisions can surprise everyone. The safer and more honest story is bigger than one star. World Cup 2026 could matter because it is where multiple football generations collide. It could be the last World Cup for some names people grew up watching. It could be the first defining World Cup for players who will own the next decade. That is how World Cups create mythology. A superstar chasing one more memory. A young forward becoming impossible to ignore. A goalkeeper turning into a national hero. A small country reaching a knockout match and making the whole world pay attention. You cannot script those things. You can only create the stage where they might happen. And 2026 creates a large stage. The fifth reason is atmosphere. 16 host cities means the tournament will not have one single mood. It will have many. That can be messy, but it can also make the event feel everywhere at once. Different cities will create different images of the tournament. Fan marches, skyline shots, public viewing areas, local food, crowded airports, road trips, and stadium nights that look completely different from one another. That matters because World Cups are not only remembered for what happens on the pitch, they are remembered for how they feel. A great tournament has a mood. You remember the colors, the psalms, the heat, the late nights, the flags and windows, and the stranger next to you becoming a friend after a goal. But scale also creates risk. Travel could become a major topic. Ticket prices could become a major topic. Heat, playing surfaces, scheduling, transportation, security, fan access, and commercialization can all become part of the conversation. And once an event is this big, every flaw becomes visible. Being huge is not the same as being loved. A tournament can generate enormous numbers and still be criticized. It can be watched by millions and still frustrate fans. That is why 2026 is not guaranteed to be remembered as the best World Cup. It might be remembered as one of the biggest, but best depends on the matches, the emotion, the fairness, the drama, and the memories people actually keep. The sixth reason is uncertainty. This may sound strange, but we are dealing with a blend of possibilities and risks, and that is why the biggest event in football can never be fully predicted. But uncertainty is one of the best things the World Cup has. In club football, the richest and strongest teams often dominate across a season. In the World Cup, the margins are thinner. The tournament is short. One bad half can change everything. One injury can reshape a team. One penalty can define a generation. A nation can arrive in strange form and still catch fire at the right time. That unpredictability is perfect for global attention. People do not only watch because they expect greatness. They watch because something might happen. A favorite might collapse. A small nation might shock the world. A goalkeeper might become impossible to beat. A teenager might play without fear. A manager might make one decision that changes the whole tournament. The World Cup is built on the word maybe. Maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the upset. Maybe this is the last chance. Maybe this is the first chapter. Maybe this match that looks ordinary on paper becomes unforgettable. That emotional uncertainty is why casual fans can enter so easily. You don't need to know every club season. You don't need to understand every transfer rumor. You can arrive at a World Cup, choose a story, and feel the stakes immediately. That is rare. Most sports leagues require context. The World Cup provides context through flags, anthems, knockout brackets, and national pressure. It tells you very quickly what is at stake. Win, and the dream continues. Lose, and the whole country goes home. That simplicity is part of its power. But the biggest challenge for 2026 may be attention itself. We live in a world where everything is competing with everything. A World Cup match is not only competing with another sport, it's competing with streaming shows, video games, music releases, news cycles, influencers, group chats, political stories, and whatever the algorithm decides to place in front of people that morning. That is why fragmented attention matters. The tournament can be everywhere and still feel scattered. People can see 10 clips from a match and still not know the score. They can know the controversy, but not the context. They can argue about a player they watched for 20 seconds. They can feel like they're part of the conversation without actually watching the game. For broadcasters and organizers, that's both a blessing and a problem. The blessing is reach. The problem is depth. If millions of people see World Cup content, that's powerful. But if fewer people commit to full matches, the meaning of most watched becomes harder to define. A tournament can dominate feeds without dominating living rooms in the same old way. That's why 2026 may teach us something about what sports audiences have become. Maybe the future of a mega event is not one giant audience doing the same thing at the same time. Maybe it's many overlapping audiences, each entering through a different door. Some people enter through national pride. Some enter through gambling or fantasy games. Some enter through a favorite player. Some enter through family tradition. Some enter through a viral clip. Some enter because the tournament is in their city. Some enter because everyone at work is talking about it, and they don't want to be left out. That kind of attention is messy, but it can be enormous. So when we ask whether 2026 could be one of the most watched events in history, we are really asking a bigger question. Can the World Cup still create a shared global moment in an age where almost nothing is shared in the same way anymore? That's the drama. Not just Argentina, Brazil, France, England, Germany, Spain, the hosts, the underdogs, the stars, the new kids, or the final. The deeper drama is whether football can still cut through everything else. And if any sporting event can do it, it's probably the World Cup. Because the World Cup has a strange advantage over almost every other event. It's both simple and enormous. A child can understand it. Countries play, winners advance. One team becomes champion. But underneath that simple structure is identity, history, politics, migration, money, media, pressure, dreams, heartbreak, and national memory. That combination is why it travels. You can watch for the football. You can watch for your country. You can watch for the spectacle. You can watch because your family is watching. You can watch because you want to understand what everyone is talking about. All of those reasons count. And in 2026, there will be more doors into the tournament than ever before. More teams, more matches, more cities, more platforms, more clips, more languages, more watch parties, more arguments, more chances for something to become unforgettable. That is why the careful version of the claim is still exciting. Not that World Cup 2026 will definitely be the most watched event ever. That is too strong before the numbers exist, and too simple for the way people watch now. The honest claim is that World Cup 2026 could be one of the biggest attention events the world has ever seen. If the football is good, if the host cities feel alive, if the early rounds produce drama, if the knockout stage gives us heavyweight clashes and unexpected survivors, if the broadcasts are easy to access, and if the clips travel, the tournament could become more than a schedule of matches. It could become the thing the world keeps checking, the thing people talk about before work, during lunch, after dinner, and before bed, the thing that turns casual viewers into temporary experts, the thing that makes people who never watch football ask, "What time is the next game?" That is when a World Cup becomes dangerous in the best way. It starts as sport, then becomes atmosphere. And once a tournament becomes atmosphere, it is no longer limited to the 90 minutes on the pitch. It lives in the streets, on phones, in family chats, in office conversations, in reaction videos, in airports, in bars, in classrooms, in parks, and in the memories people attach to a summer. That is the ceiling for 2026. A bigger tournament does not guarantee a better tournament. More matches do not guarantee more magic. More platforms do not guarantee deeper attention. More spectacle does not guarantee more love. But the ingredients are there. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 host cities, 3 countries, June 11 to July 19th. A football world that already cares. A North American market with room to grow. A media environment that can turn one moment into a global conversation before the match is over. That is why the world should pay attention. Not because history is guaranteed, because history is possible. And if 2026 delivers the right matches, the right stories, and the right moments, it could feel less like a tournament and more like a global takeover. Subscribe for the next World Cup story.